welcome all of you to today's lesson. But before we move on to today's lesson, let's dive to this question, or let's try and answer the following questions. So let's take this simple exercise. Are you ready? Wow. So the stages of development in technologies over a period of time is what we are calling what? Generations of computers. Generations of what? Computers. Clap for yourself. That is beautiful. So we are going to look at the second question, which is the technology that was welcome in the period of 1950s to 1960s is what? So within the period of 1950s to 1960s, which technology was used? So first, we have to identify that generation, which generation was between the 1950s to 1960s. That is the what? Second generations of what? Computers. So they make use of what we call the technology is what? Transistors. Did you get it right? Beautiful. They make use of what? Transistors. That is very nice. Our third question is the second generations of computers are larger in size compared to the first generations of computers. You cannot compare the second generations of computers to what? The first generation, because it is never what? Larger in size compared to it. So this is totally what? False. That is great. Let's move on to today's lesson, which is the third generations of what? Computers. So the third generations of computers were invented in 1960s to what? 1970s. Pay attention. Within the period of 1960s to 1970s. Wow. So, which technology was used? They make use of what we call the integrated circuit. So this became the norm in the third generations of what? Computers, which resulted in even smaller size what? Computers. And this has increased what? Processing or what? Output, because they tend to work faster than the second generations of what? Computers. Let's have a look at our what? Integrated circuit, how they look like. So this is the picture of our integrated circuit, and in this picture over here you will see it being mounted on the motherboard. So this is how the integrated circuit looks like. So be paying attention to each of these technologies that were used in the various generations of computers, because these drawings or these pictures can be drawn for you to identify these technologies. I hope that is clear. So let's move on to look at what? Some characteristics of the third generations of computers. So the third generations of computers make use of what? Integrated circuit, or what we are simply calling the what? IC. When you go to the repairer will say what? Your IC has bent. So it is the integrated circuit that is abbreviated, and we are calling what? The IC. So let's move on to the second characteristics. They were portable and more reliable than the second generations of what? Computers. And these devices consume less power, and then they generate what? Less power compared to the what? The second generations of computers. And the size of these computers was smaller, or were smaller compared to the previous generations of computers. And finally, the maintenance cost was also quite low. Clap for yourself for going through this lesson successfully. See you in our next lesson as we go into the fourth and the fifth generations of computers. See you in our next lessons. Kindly subscribe and to help me do more of this educational video. Thank you. Bye bye.